Another person I know just told me of his story of how he's lost his prized Rolex because of a break-in entry into his home. If you're watching this, you probably love watches, and whether you have one or many, you probably keep some or all of your watches at home. And you probably can't help but worry about the possible risk of theft and wonder if there's more you could be doing to help keep your watches and yourself safe at home for extra peace of mind. There's plenty to think about when it comes to storing your watches at home, and I've got a few tips I'd like to share with you. The good thing about watches is that even though they can be high value items, they're small and quite easy to store when compared to a vintage car, a work of art. But we all need to concern ourselves with things like security and safety, longevity, and keeping watches from premature wear or aging. Properly storing your watches will not only keep your watches safe from things like rust and moisture exposure and premature wear to the movements, which will lead to a greater service bill down the road, but will also make your watches less accessible to sticky-fingered thieves who would very much like to get their hands on your treasured watch. Many stolen watches that I hear about are just opportunists hoping to get lucky, but don't rule out calculated, targeted and planned theft. As we've seen on Paul Thorpe's videos, when a thief wants to get their hands on something, they'll pretty much go to any extreme to get it, and there isn't much in many cases you can do about it. But what you can do is not pass things over on a silver platter for them, and ideally make sure they leave empty-handed. Thieves tend to go down a path of least resistance, and if you live in a house that has weak doors and weak windows, no alarm, you have a high value watch collection left out on display, this is an intruder's dream. So we need to ideally make life difficult for them. We need to plan ahead and not make ourselves easy targets and not present them with low-hanging fruit. We want to put the odds in our favour that they will leave empty-handed, and here's what we can do. Firstly, beef up your home security. Ideally, we want to stop an intruder getting into your house in the first place, or at least make it a big struggle for them. The reality is, if they want to get in, they're probably getting in through brute force, but remember to always lock and double lock your doors and your windows when you're going out. Obvious I know, but the first line of defence is to check the robustness of your windows and doors. Are they secure? Are they modern? Are they solid? And if they're not, the first line of defence entry into your house is a bit of a weak one, and then you're probably more likely to rely on the next lines of defence, as break-in and entry to your house is quite possible. Do online research yourself, but here in the UK, the Neighbourhood Watch suggests the best way to protect your home from burglary is to follow the wide security combination. Window locks installed, interior lights on timer, door double locks or deadlocks, exterior lights on sensor. There's no shortage on online information on how to help keep your home secure online, so fill your boots and go to town here. Consume as much information as you can. Next up, get a safe. It makes sense to invest in a home safe for your watches, because having a safe is the second line of defence between someone that's entered your house and your watches. Position your home safe in a discreet location if you can, and if you have a large collection, consider having more than one safe so you can spread your watches out. You need to invest in a decent safe here to store your watches, and it should be rated torch and tool resistant for at least 30 minutes. It should also have a fire rating suitable for protection in the event of a fire. When having a home safe professionally installed, make sure it's bolted to the structure or the foundation, or find one that's too heavy for someone to move by themselves, usually a couple of 100 kilograms. Restrict who has knowledge of and access to the safe, and potentially speak with your home insurance company about what criteria they put on approved safes to help bring down your insurance premiums. Next up, get insurance cover for your watches, or at least self-insure. It's a good idea to take out home contents insurance to cover your possessions against theft or fire or other risks such as accidental damage. If someone happens to destroy or damage your possessions, it can cost a lot of money to replace them. Home contents insurance covers personal and home possessions, and can also cover you if you take the items out of your home on holiday, for example. The insurance covers your own possessions and those of close family members living with you. And I've got a dedicated video coming soon discussing home insurance, tips and ideas, so subscribe now so you don't miss it. And Paul Thorpe did a really good video on self-insurance, and I'll leave a link to that in the comments below. Next up, get a home alarm. a good one, ideally with monitoring. There's no question that home alarm systems deter thieves and can increase the odds of catching a burglar if your home does get broken into. 60% of convicted burglars say that they will target another home if they discover a security system in the one that they're trying to steal from. So home security systems and monitoring discourage break-ins. I think of a good home security system as an investment. While it can be simple to tally the upfront and monthly costs associated with the security system and alarm monitoring, attaching a price tag to peace of mind is a difficult thing to do, especially if you have children or teenagers in the house, and of course, valuables too. Home security systems can do more than just deter burglars. The right system can keep you linked to your home even if you're not there, and it can let you know if your doors are opened and if they're closed. Nowadays, home security systems, they're very smart and can be pretty low cost and quite easy to install. Here in the UK, Simply Safe, Very Sure, they're worth checking out, and there's many others. And with home monitoring, you can also have excellent features like zero visibility dense fog release, which is designed to deploy zero visibility in the event of a situation. Burglars have the ability to pick locks, inhibit signals and cut power lines, among many other techniques, in order to take what isn't theirs, but burglars can't function without their vision, and impairing the intruder's vision before they have a chance to identify what they plan to steal is another obstacle for them to overcome. If they can't see it, they can't steal it. Again, there's plenty online about home intruder alarms with monitoring. Do your homework, find a decent solution that suits your budget and your lifestyle. Next up, spread your watches around the house, but for God's sake, remember where they are. The message here is don't put all your eggs in one basket. You don't want to give intruders all your watches huddled together on a golden platter, and spreading them out mitigates against them all being taken in one fell swoop. Next up, consider secret hiding places for your watches. Watches are small, so it isn't hard to hide them, but for God's sake, remember where they are. There may be inconspicuous but good little hiding places dotted around your house that you know of. Make sure you store your watches safely as well, and there's more coming on this later. And I know this may sound like something a bit out of a Bond movie, but other examples, you can buy fake book storage, little hideaways that look like books that you can put in your bookshelf. You can buy tinned food storage, little hideaways that look like a can of beans or a drinks bottle. You can buy secret plug storage that you can put into a hole in your wall and it looks like a plug socket. You can get deodorant cans, shelf clocks. You can get a lot of these things on Amazon. It's just a few ideas for you. Oh, and one thing about secret storage, be careful to avoid strong magnetic fields. With most watches, their movements don't like strong magnets, so don't stash mechanical watches in home audio speakers. Next, a little tip: if you're a bit forgetful, keep a digital record of where you're keeping your watches. Recording where you keep your watches will serve as a good memory jogger and aid memoir. Have a Google Doc or an Excel spreadsheet or a list saved in the contacts of your phone, or an Excel sheet kept in Dropbox, or a note on Evernote. Whatever's best for you, just have a quick reference guide to save a panic down the line when you can't remember where you placed something. Oh, make sure that your other half doesn't throw your can of beans out thinking they're old and they've just thrown out your James Bond Submariner Big Crown. There needs to be a little bit of housekeeping around this. Decent communication. Next, make sure that your watches are well protected in their secret stash. You need to consider how you actually store your watches, and depending on where you store them, this may already be answered. If you plan to store your watches in a safe or a safety deposit box or somewhere else in your home, store them either in a watch box or a soft travel pouch or some kind of protective case like a Rolex coffin case. Some people like to buy little watch boxes to keep their watches in, others use soft travel pouches or PVC plastic pouches to store them individually. And I must say that the Rolex factory hard plastic transportation boxes that I mentioned, the coffins, are great because they don't take up a lot of space and they're designed to be made in a way that you could possibly stack them on top of one another. They keep the watches well protected with their styrofoam, which prevent scratches, and you can buy these online or get in touch with me and I can arrange some for you. Next up, try to make sure that your watches are relatively easily accessible. Whilst you want your watches to be safe and secure and well protected, you want them to also be relatively accessible to you. For example, if you like to rotate your watches or like to look at them often or wind them every few days, it can be a bit of a ball ache for you to have to get out ladders or empty cupboards or get access to a secret spot you have to travel to it or journey there. Whilst they need to be secure, easy-ish access will help you keep your hobby efficient and keep the fun in it, otherwise it will feel like hard work. Next up, for extra security, consider even not telling your other half where your watches are kept. This is because, for security reasons, the less people who know, the better. You have your documentation online that your other half can refer to if something terrible happens to you, but some intruders will do rather unthinkable things to get their hands on what they want that involve other people that may be in the house. So if they don't know where your items are, it's better for everyone. Enough said on that, but I'm sure you get my drift. Next up, consider getting decoy watches for your home. If intruders break and enter and there's an alarm going off, they won't have time to deeply inspect watches to see if they're real, as the pressure will be on and the clock will be ticking for them. I personally like to have a few decoys at home, so if there was a break-in, I'd rather they took a bunch of decoys and then went on their way. In the heat of the moment, they may be happy with what they think are real watches and scram. These decoys you can leave out if you go away on your bedside table, for example, or in your sock drawer, a place where thieves like to rummage. Next up, don't leave your watches out when you leave the house. Ever. Just don't. Always put them away in their safe places. Yes, even if you're going out for just a few hours, hide your watches away. Next up, consider getting a bank safety deposit box. If you like to rotate your watches daily or weekly, having your watches at home may be a necessity so that you can get the most out of your hobby, enjoying looking at them and wearing them on a regular basis. However, if you have more of an investment collection that are safe queens, it may be worth keeping these watches in the super secure location of a bank safety deposit box. Granted, this can be a little inconvenient if you don't work or live very close to one, but the peace of mind with this is absolutely worth it. You can visit it every few weeks to wind the watches, and you'll enjoy the lower insurance premiums and the peace of mind. Next up, tell everyone you keep your watches in a bank safety deposit box, whether you do or you don't. And I suggest this verbal decoy as a bit of a strategy, because Bob and Pete down the pub really don't need to know where you keep your watches. And the reality is there's listening ears everywhere. So if you're known as a bit of a watch guy, and if ever anyone asks, where do you keep your watches? Just say in a bank safety deposit box. No matter who it is, that's your answer. They don't need to know what safety grade your home safe is, or how or where you hide your watches around the house, or that your home monitoring has a 127-second response time to get from them to your house. The answer is always, I keep my watches in the bank in a safety deposit box. And see my other video called How to Keep Safe on the Streets. And if you're getting any value from this, please hit the like button. Okay, next up, when storing your watches, be mindful of moisture and temperature. We've heard this saying a lot in our lives, but best to keep your watches stored in a cool, dry place. Not damp, not too hot, and not too cold. If you wouldn't store your mobile phone there, don't store your watches there. Moisture and high or low temperatures are not your watch's friends. Moisture, and in particular long-term moisture, is never a good thing, as it can cause rust and oxidation, and in the worst case, the moisture may find its way into the watch's movement. Furthermore, moisture and cold will cause premature wear and aging to the oils, which will potentially damage the movement. One way to tackle moisture, if there's really no other option for your long-term secret storage spot, is to use those little silica gel bags that absorb moisture. But keep in mind that these bags need to be replaced occasionally, as they do absorb moisture. And here a quick note on leather. If you have watches on leather straps, the silica bags may potentially dry the straps out faster. So it's wise to either remove the leather straps or skip the silica gel altogether. And at the same time, an issue that some people have is that mold starts to grow on the leather straps, because mold grows partly as a result of moisture. So whilst the silica gel will prevent mold, it may cause the leather strap to dry out, and you'll have to make a call on what's more appropriate to do for your situation. The ideal way to store your watch is in an environment with minimal moisture and at room temperature. You don't want it to be too cold or too hot, like in a loft or attic or down in a cellar. Both your home and a bank safety deposit box should do the job here. Next up, it's wise to separate the watch from its box and papers. It's best not to store them together, as this would be a thief's dream. Imagine that, a watch in its box with its papers. Lovely. With the box and the papers, the same rule applies to moisture and temperature. Protect them well and store them away from the watch. And finally, a word on watch winders. Watch winders are a great invention, but whether to use a watch winder splits the watch community pretty much down the middle. However, one big thing to consider is that if you leave your watches in a watch winder, they're probably easier to find and take if an intruder was to break and enter. Watches in a watch winder is a bit of a dream result for a thief. Thanks for watching to the end. I hope you found the tips in this video useful. Please like and subscribe and hit that bell button if you got any value from this video. Head over to my website and see what watches I have for sale and download the free guide that's there. If you've got any tips or thoughts or experiences to share about storing your watches at home, please share in the comments below. As always, I'd love to hear from you. Cheers and see you on the next one.